You're now watching the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Mike Missanelli podcast. The day is February 1st, Thursday. It is podcast number 159 on the Mike Missanelli podcast, brought to us by BetRivers. In a little bit, we're going to have Keith Pompey, who covers the Sixers for the Philadelphia Inquirer. We haven't had Keith on in a while, but we need to get his perspective on the big problem here with the Sixers, which happens to be Joel Embiid and the playoff situation for your Sixers, which right now, I got to be honest with you, I'm very down on it. And I would love to be optimistic about the Sixers. I've kind of been, laying low about the Sixers for most of these podcasts because I really don't know where they are at this point in the hierarchy. I thought that they were going to be a solid third. They're not there right now. And now we have this Embiid knee situation, which we will go over. And we'll also go over in a little bit the 65-game rule, which obviously players are starting to bitch about. They don't like it. So it's causing a problem inside of a problem. And we'll try to solve the problem. How's that? I always have the solution for a problem that probably will never, ever, ever happen, but it happens to be my solution. So we'll take care of that a little later. All right, let me just get to the main issue here because we're going to go back in time. We're going to talk about why he ducked Denver and how he injured against Golden State, and maybe he shouldn't have been playing against Golden State. So there's all this chatter going on now with Joel Embiid, which leads just to the main point. And the main point is how will this affect the Sixers as they try to go on a playoff run? And so I'm going to give you this is my conclusion. I know it's February, but I am now very skeptical that this guy will be healthy enough to be a dominant enough player in the playoffs to carry the Sixers to an even Eastern Conference final. All right? That puts them in the same place they have been year after year after year, losing in the second round. But the injury situation with this guy, I look at it and I go, okay, there are many ways you can look at it. And one is that he's soft. The other is that he's really injured. Bottom line comes down to, do you actually think he's going to be healthier when the playoffs roll around? Like all of a sudden somebody's going to click their fingers and go, wow, he's 100% healthy. He's going to kick your ass in the playoffs 20 times. Because that's what it would take. It would actually take more than 20 times for him. And he would be playing on an every day after basis. Well, one day of rest and play. Now, with his track record, do you see that miraculously happening? I don't. And that's a pretty pessimistic look at it, but it's a pretty reasonable look at it. First of all, the Sixers are not good enough to win without his dominance. So if you're not going to have his dominance, you're not going to win anyway. You're talking about winning 4 times per series. All right? Right now, the Sixers have fallen to the 5th spot in the standings. That means if they stay in the 5th spot, very likely, if he's going to miss some games, they can't win without him. They're not going to ascend in the standings, right? I don't think they can drop to 6th, but they'll stay in that 5th spot. They'll play the surging Cleveland Cavaliers in the first round. They won't have home court advantage in any series if they finish 5th. So now you're talking about, okay, you can make a case they beat Cleveland with Embiid kind of hobbling around and still scoring 30-plus. Guess who the next series would be against if you fall into the 5th spot? The Boston Celtics. It's like Groundhog Day with this team. It's the same day over and over and over again. And you're going to tell me with Embiid in the condition that he's in, unless there's some miraculous cure, that they're going to beat the Boston Celtics 4 times when they don't have home court advantage with Embiid not being 100% dominant. All right, if you believe that, I can sell you some land somewhere.
Tomorrow is actual Groundhog Day.
It is. Okay. You know what's going to happen. Here's what's going to happen. I hate to do this. I don't like to spoil people's fun here. But I'm so much of a realist, and I've seen so much of this nonsense year after year after year that I can't sell you a bill of goods. So here's what's going to happen every other day in the playoffs. So he's going to play well. He's going to then be banged up. He may miss a game, or he may not be 100% and try to skate by that way. And that's the same thing we saw in the Boston series, right? By the end of that Boston series last year, what was he? He wasn't his dominant self. Now, you could say maybe it was his will was lacking. Maybe his health was lacking. It's always something with him. And that doesn't mean I don't appreciate him. I think he's a great, great player. And that performance that he had the other night when he scored 70 is miraculous. But then I go, he is good enough and healthy enough to score 70, and all of a sudden it breaks down like a week later? And it starts with the Denver situation. All right. Here's the backdrop of this whole thing. Basketball is a very physically draining sport. It, in fact, is the most physically demanding sport of all the professional sports. And people say, well, what about football? Well, football, you have equipment, and it's rough, and it's dangerous, and all that kind of thing. But it's not as athletically, physically demanding, up and down, cardiovascular, the whole bit. And hockey is close, but hockey, at least, you have a skate that sometimes you can glide on. You're not using every bit of your leg power to get up and down the court. Basketball, the cardio effect of it, especially now, with as athletic as this game is, up and down, it's taxing. I get it. And his body, a 7'2", almost 300-pound guy, is going to take a pounding getting up and down. I have great empathy for the physicality that it takes Joel Embiid to get through the games. But it is what it is. Now, I always thought that Joel Embiid should play at a lesser weight than he is. And maybe that's unrealistic. But when he first came into the league, he was sleek. He looked more like Bam Adebayo than he does Joel Embiid now. Now, maybe it was the natural growth of his body, where that was what it was going to be. He was going to be 7'2", he's going to be 300 pounds, and you could do nothing about it. But I always thought if he played at a lesser weight, it would be less taxing on his joints. But it's too late for that now. But here's the other part. Joel, God love him, is a diva to the nth degree. And I've had people from the Sixers tell me that he milks everything. He complains and milks everything to the point where they get when he talks, sometimes guys like turn their back and they roll their eyes. That's the type of guy he is. He knows how to play drama. And so that's got to be part of it, because when you're evaluating, I mean, the equation of this Denver Nuggets situation, maybe you got to go there. All right. So here's the thing. We're going to find out what this MRI says. And then everything I've just said, you may be able to turn back and smash me in the face with it. Because if the MRI says that he's really injured, then it's my bad. But let's go back in time. And let's look at the two major issues that we need to talk about now. One is the Denver Nugget issue, and the other is the 65-game rule, which a lot of people think that forced Embiid to play against the Warriors when he really wasn't healthy enough to play. All right, we'll try to get through these two issues here. Let's first talk about the Denver Nuggets thing. And now there are a lot of people that love to stand behind Embiid. Fans like to stand behind Embiid. And so when he misses the Denver Nuggets game, a lot of fans of Embiid and even national media people who seem to be fans of Embiid, they're always taking up his cause. They say it's merely a coincidence that he didn't play against Denver. And see, this is the evidence of it, because he was really hurt. And he couldn't play against Denver, and then he couldn't play against Portland. And then when he tried to play on the injury, this is what happened. He tweaked it more. All right, you can look at it that way. That's fair. However, there's a backstory to this. When you miss the 3 previous games in Denver and haven't played in that city in 3 years, I reserve the right to be skeptical about what your reasons are. And I don't think I'm being unfair. If he didn't miss those previous games, I'd go, okay, he's injured. He didn't want to play in Denver. But I look at the other thing, well, he's certainly comfortable playing against Jokic at home. Why is that? Well, he feels more comfortable at home. He's got the crowd behind him, and he doesn't have to worry about 5,280 feet above sea level, which really hurts some teams that go into Denver because they're not used to that whole thing. And maybe he's thinking in the back of his mind, you know what, I'm not going to really look good here because my win's not going to be good. Jokic is going to outplay me. I can't afford to have that happen because I have already left the impression that I dominate his ass when we play him in Philly. And I can't take a chance on any of that, chopping any of that dominance away if I look bad in Denver. It's just a theory. You may agree with it or you may not agree with it. However, it goes to me more beyond coincidence when the guy has missed intentionally 3 other games in Denver. Is that a coincidence? The 3 previous games, what's a coincidence and what's not? It's a coincidence that he missed game 1 2 years ago, 3 years ago, game 2, game 3. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. I'm just putting it out in the atmosphere for your perusal. All right. Let's go to the 65-game rule. Because a lot of people are saying, see that? Look what you did to him. See the criticism that you levied. And not only did you call him a chicken because he wouldn't play against Jokic in Denver, but now you're forcing him with this 65-game rule to play because he needs 65 games to be considered for the MVP. All right, let's look at that. He comes out against Golden State. And it looked like he was hurt. But when I look at Embiid, I don't know if he's really hurt or not. I can't tell anymore. It's like maybe he was milking it. Maybe he was trying to show the world, look at this, I'm trying to play for y'all, and I'm not really healthy. And so he embellished the injury. He embellished. He knows how to play drama. And he knows exactly that if he kind of slogs along in this game, the announcers are going to say, oh, look, he's not healthy. And the fans are going to say, oh, look at that, he's not healthy. He knows that's going to happen. Now, maybe he was legitimately hurt, but maybe he was playing the Joel Embiid diva thing, which he does a lot. And it's not that I don't like the guy. I really like the guy. I think the Sixers need to fortify their team enough around him to win something. They're never going to win without him. So it's not like I don't want him there. I'm just trying to point out some realities of the situation. Now, again, mind you, he was healthy enough a week and a half to go to score 70. I don't know what happened in a week and a half. I have no idea, but now he can't play. All right. So anyway, let's get to the 65-game rule. And we're going to talk to Keith Pompey in a minute about this because it's a major issue. Everybody's bitching. All the star players are bitching about it. Here's the thing about the NBA. The NBA has created the biggest player entitlement in the history of sports. And it is a monster that no longer can be quelled. Once you get to the level of the salaries that these guys are making, you can never pull it back. So when you got guys making max money, $50, $60 million a year, what do you think that does to those guys? It gives them entitlement beyond belief to the point where they can't even recognize themselves as human beings anymore. They recognize themselves as people who sit on a throne who are so much bigger than the game and hence the fans that 65 games is what? You're asking us to play 65 games? So the whole thing has gotten out of whack. They have tried to bring this back by saying, okay, you're disappointing the fans. Fans pay money to go see that guy play. This guy is scratched tonight out of load management. So we're going to put this number in at 65. And now they go, 65? That's not fair for us to play 65. You're going to take us out of an MVP race? It's gotten out of control. It's craziness. All right? So The players look at it like they have no regard for the fans. They have no regard for their own organization. They are a sole practitioner. They are an independent contractor that just happens to play on a team. They are bigger than the game. And if they don't feel like playing, they feel no responsibility to play at all. And I'm not blaming them. I'm blaming the structure that made them that way. The only way you're going to be able to stop this is a radical solution, which will never happen. But I am filled with radical solutions, so I'm going to give you a couple radical solutions. The only way you can change this thing is A, reduce the season's amount of games. They play 82 games at a crazy pace. I already mentioned, it's the hardest sport athletically to play. It takes the most out of you when you're playing 82 games at that kind of pace, up and down, traveling around every other game, 4 games in 6 days, all that kind of stuff wears you out. So if you reduce the number of games, maybe players play more games, maybe they're healthier for the playoffs, the whole thing. But why will that never happen? Do you actually think that these team owners are going to give up that kind of revenue? And they're going to say, well, you know what? We're going to make it now just a 60-game schedule. And we're going to lose 22 games of revenue just because we want to make the game better. All right, so right away, get a Sharpie and cross that solution out because it's ridiculous to think that would ever possibly happen. The other is that instead of giving awards based on your scoring average, you give the awards based on totals. In other words, the guy that scores the most points, and to score the most points, you have to play the most games, most likely. The guy who scores the most points gets the scoring title. The guy that scores the most points is the front runner for the MVP, or the guy that gets the most rebounds. And the only way you do that is to accumulate those kind of numbers is you have to play more. And if that really floats your boat, then you will play more. A guy like Embiid's already won an MVP. Is he going to feel the need to play more? Probably not. These guys making $60 million a year. Do you think the MVP means that much to him, or does the $60 million mean more? It's the $60 million. So to preserve their legacy, they have to win in the playoffs. To win in the playoffs, you have to be rested and healthy enough to win in the playoffs. So what do? You shirk the regular season. And oofa to the fans who pay big money in the NBA. It's a big ticket to go watch you play. The solution is not viable. And it's because of the CBA structure that allowed these guys to make max contracts to the point where they're making $60 million a year. And so people say to me, well, Mike, how about if we tweak the CBA? Let me just tell you that the CBA that they have in basketball now does not expire until the year 2029, 2030. So there's a lot of time now. And the only way you're going to enact these kind of changes in sport where you go, you know what, the salaries are got out of control. The salaries have caused these guys to say, I'm precious. I'm on a throne, so I don't have to play. The only way you break that down is what? You have to shut the game down. Just like in every other sport where there was a strike, in order to get the provisions that you wanted to get, whether it was the owners or whether it was the players, you had to shut down the game. And somewhere along the line, you have to convince the NBA players the NBA is in trouble unless we do X. Now, this happened many years ago. It happened in the 1980s when David Stern said, we're hemorrhaging money here. This league is not healthy. So here's what we have to do. We have to put a salary cap structure in the NBA. And at that point, they convinced the players to do it. Can they convince them now to do this? I don't think so, because this 65-game provision was approved by the Players Association because it was a compromise that the owners wanted. The owners were hearing that their fans were turned off by this whole thing. Their fans are a customer, so they have to make some kind of a change. The Player Association goes along with it. It's now in the CBA. I guarantee you that that's going to be changed in some form now. But the CBA itself, with the salary cap structures and the max contract provisions, cannot be changed until the year 2030. So that's the state that basketball is in right now. I just gave you two solutions that will never, ever happen. And we're going to be talking about this 65-game thing for forever because every star player is talking about it. How dare you make me play 65 games when I'm not ready or capable mentally or physically to play 65 games? Darren, let me bring you in. I know you get a raspy voice here, but I talked for a long period of time there. So what were your thoughts?
Mike, you're right. There's really no way to fix it without shutting the league down. They did do it before. The NBA, to me, seems like they have so many rules that you have to go to extremes to get around. The salary cap, you have to do what the Sixers did with basically just tanking a couple years, blowing out your salaries and getting good draft picks. If you're in cap hell, there's no other way around that. You have this situation now with the 65-game rule and the load management that there's no other way around. So, I hate to use the expression, but the Indians run the TP, and that's what happens in this league.
First of all, it's Native Americans. Yeah, at this point, come on.
Native Americans, my apologies.
The Indians are running the TP, is what you just said?
Yeah, but the workers are running the company as opposed to the Chiefs. That's the problem. They have too much power. Players in the league, in a lot of leagues, have gotten too much power, and they can just sit out whenever they want. And as a fan, how could you buy season tickets to the NBA?
It's nothing like the NBA. There's no other sport that compares to the NBA and the entitlement that the players in the NBA feel. It's not the same in football. It's not the same in hockey. It's not the same in baseball. They're playing 162 games in baseball. They do give them a couple days off, but it's not labeled as load management.
Well, I never really said that the NBA wasn't the only one. I just think it's the worst in the NBA.
It is the only one. They don't do this in football. They don't do this in hockey. They don't do this in basketball.
Well, there's also only 16 games
in baseball.
Baseball, you don't have injuries like you do in basketball. It's not that easy to just have a guy sit out. Why would you have a guy in baseball do load management? For what?
Well, they do it sometimes. They give a day off to a guy, but again, it's 162 games, and you're right, it's not as physically taxing. But let's go back to the Embiid situation now. Now, I said a lot of things about Embiid just now. How do you feel about this whole situation with him, and how do you feel about where it leads the Sixers this year?
Well, I think they're in a bad spot, Mike. What are you going to do? Run him out there every 3 or 4 games with a tender knee? They're going to have to shut him down for an extended period of time based upon the MRI results today. There's no other way around that.
All right.
He's
suppose
obviously
the MRI
hurt.
results say there's no structural damage.
I'd be surprised. I'll say that because the other night, that wasn't him just saying, "Oh, I don't feel like playing anymore." He went down. His knee, I think he's hurt, really hurt.
Wait,
then that's a bigger issue.
There's two different situations here. One is he had a sore knee. The other is when Kuminga fell on him. So which one are we talking about? They're not the same. They're not the same thing.
When he pulled up lame under the basket.
Okay, but then later Kuminga fell on him, and that's when he got out of the game.
I think it was hurting him already, is my point.
Okay, so if it was hurting him already, I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
Yeah.
The Sixers training staff said he didn't look good when he was warming up for the Denver game, so we had to scratch him. Now, wouldn't they have made the same evaluation prior to that Warriors game?
Yes, I believe that, and I believe he was under pressure to get in the game. And it was that.
So you're more on Embiid's side here.
A little bit. I am. But the bigger issue, Mike, is how many more years are we going to deal with this? I know he's arguably
it's
a top
reality.
3 player.
He's not going to get any healthier, and he's not going to be have magic tonic to make him healthy throughout the playoffs. So what I'm trying to get from you is, where does this season go?
You have to shut him down and hope for the best.
No, at the end, where does it go? Where does it go at the end? What's the end result of this season?
The end result is they lose to Boston in the second round.
Okay, so again, what we're saying here is they lose in the second round.
Yeah, whether he's healthy or not, they're going to lose to Boston.
Well, if he's healthy, they might not.
You really think they can compete with Boston?
They're supposed to be deeper this year.
Well, you're the hoop head. Are they?
Yeah, they're definitely deeper. I don't know if they're deeper to the point where guys make that much of a difference, but they can play a lot of guys and absorb some minutes with guys more than they could before.
Better coached. I think they're better coached. I just don't think they can. I just think he's healthy. Unless they get a third player.
Like, how are they better coached?
Well, I don't know. They're not giving up massive leads in the fourth quarter.
They got 17 losses. They're in fifth place.
Well, they've had a lot of injuries. Maxey hasn't played in a week.
Okay.
They've lost 17 of those losses.
A
third of them are in the last week.
I'm not totally convinced that they're better coached. I really don't. I know a lot of people love Nick Nurse. I look up and they got 17 losses. They can't win at all when Embiid's not on the floor. So how good a coach are we doing? What are we talking about here?
Well, the last week you haven't had Embiid or Maxey, and sometimes not even Tobias.
Okay. All right.
They're
That's
beat
fair
up,
enough. All righty. Our next guest on the Mike Missanelli podcast is going to be able to explain better the situation with the Sixers and Joel Embiid. He is the award-winning writer, reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, covering the Sixers now for many years. The great Keith Pompey joins us. How you doing, Keith?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
We haven't had you on in a while, and this is the day that we needed to have you on. So, first of all, do you have? Can you share any information about the MRI and what it revealed for Joel?
Now, the thing is, they're being a little tight-lipped right now on that. But the thing that I don't know if I should say concerns me a little bit is that, they went back to Philadelphia and they wanted to get a second doctor's opinion on whatever it is, get it looked at. And, I'm assuming they took him back to the team doctor and had him check it out. Now, I also don't believe that Joel Embiid was going to play in tonight's game in Utah based off of that injury. But to me, it looked like it could possibly be a bone bruise, or he could have hyperextended it a little bit. But, it's one of those things where they've been extremely tight-lipped right now. But when you say you have to go through further evaluation, sometimes that can be a little concerning to me.
All right, let's just say that it's just, the regular maintenance for his knee, and he's got problems with it, and he's always had problems with it, and he has to kind of, rest up, get his way through it. But this is now several years of this. And so how optimistic or how can we expect that he's going to be well enough to play maybe 20 playoff games where you have to play every other day at a very high level competition?
That's a great question. I mean, I don't know if you can, at this particular time, and that's not a knock on Joel, but I think it's like the huge unknown. And what you're saying about is, you would hope that he would, but what you're saying is true. They're playing basically every other day. The only off day you get is sometimes it's a travel day, right? Once you get to it, and it's going to be more minutes, and guys are going to be banging against him. So, for him, you hope that he can do it, but at the same time, and when you look at the things that have happened in the past, like you said, several years of this, you have to have your fingers crossed if you're the Sixers coaching staff or a fan of the 76ers, because, it's going to be the unknown because of this. And there's always, and unfortunately for him, there's been a lot of knee injuries.
It's almost like a hopeless situation at this point, that you're hoping, we know that he's not going to be miraculously cured. He's not going to be the fresh Embiid that came into the league as they go into the playoffs. But here's the dilemma now, Keith. The Sixers are in the 5th spot. That's not a good spot because they won't have home court advantage in any of the playoff series. So the perfect thing is, okay, let's just rest into the playoffs. But you've seen that before, where when he's not playing regularly, that doesn't help him cardio wise. And we've seen him get exhausted in certain situations. How should the Sixers play this?
But you know what? I think a little bit in between. I mean, of the two. Like, I get what you're saying, and it makes a lot of sense. And I didn't think about that. Like, whenever he takes an extended period off, he comes out of shape. But I think that forget about getting MVP, forget about all NBA. I think they got to pick their spots and they got to rest this guy because, as much as they can be the number 3 seed and he can play whatever. That doesn't guarantee that they're going to get out of the second round, right? I feel like if he's number 5 spot, they're number 5 spot. But if Embiid comes in rested and his condition is in optimum shape, right? It has to be that way. I think that's the only way that they're going to win in the playoffs. But you're right. You can't shut it completely down. But you have to look at it like, hey, he's going to miss several games. Like, if there's 3 games a week or 4 games a week, he's only playing in 2 of them. I mean, that's just how it's going to have to be.
And it puts them in a dangerous spot because the second round, if this is what happens and they stay in 5th, it will be against Boston. And if they finish 3rd, it wouldn't be against the Celtics in the second round. So, I mean, I would think that would be a consideration also. But I guess you're right. You got to now take your chances. His health is more important than who you're going to play in the second round.
Exactly. I'm like, let's be real. Like, if you take Joel Embiid off this team, do you have faith that they will get out of the second round? Do you have faith that they'll get out of the first round? So, I mean, we look at it like the funny thing is everybody's talking about how he scored 70 points, but that was a competitive game that he scored those 70 points in. Now, granted, guys were feeding him the ball, but at the same time, that just tells you his importance to the 76ers.
Yeah, listen, I don't like to put some shade on Joel, but I've seen it so many times during his career that he really knows how to milk drama, and in a lot of ways he could be a diva. So I don't know this Denver situation. I don't know what to make of it because there's a track record of him missing that game. And if there wasn't that, I would say, okay, then fine. He was hurt. He missed the game. Like, how does that come out with you?
You know what? When it first happened, I was in Indiana and I saw it and I was like, wow, this guy can't move. And I know for a fact, after the game, it took him forever to get out of the locker room. He was getting treatment, but he was trying to make it seem like he was talking to someone, but he was in the trainer's room. And I asked him about his mobility in his knee. And that's the first time he said to me, like, yeah, I got to get through it. Normally he's like, I'll be okay, real quick, and want to change the subject. So he opened up a little bit. But the way that the whole thing went down, I'm like, come on, really, dude? Like, you're supposed to be able to play, and then you don't play, right? And you're like, come on, really? Like, really? Like, what's going on? But I'm going to tell you this. When I saw him playing against and initially I thought when they played against Portland, he didn't play. I'm like, okay, yeah, he's not going to play because then people are going to say if he played, then he was milking it and da da da.
Yeah, he had to miss that Portland game too.
Yeah, he had to. So when he got on the court and against Golden State, and I saw him get ready to jump one time and fell to the ground because he couldn't lift, and I saw just how he was standing in the perimeter doing what he used to do, just shooting threes and shooting stuff from the outside. It was like to a point like, yo, get him out the game. Like, seriously, he looks bad. He looked like a boxer who was 5 years past his prime trying to get paid and got knocked out. Like, I'm serious. That's what he looked like. Like, he did. And it was hard to watch. So that brings me back. I know it's long-winded, but it brings me back to that Denver thing. And I honestly feel like Joel really wanted to play against Denver because he knew what everyone was saying about him. And then it got to a point where he couldn't go, and he said he couldn't do it. And the reason why he came back against Golden State is because guess what? Everyone's talking bad about him. They're calling him soft. They're doing this. They're doing that. And, you know what, Mike? You can say Joel is a diva. You can say whatever. Everybody, some people don't like him. But I'll be honest with you, I kind of felt bad for him when I went in the locker room after the Golden State game because, dude, it was crazy. I mean, like the stuff that you don't see on TV. There was one point where it was after the end of the first quarter where Joel walks into the locker room. Now he has this big brace or pad on his knee, and he has like team security and somebody on the medical team with him, walking with him. And then in the middle of the second quarter, while the game was going on, he comes out of the locker room, but he has to walk like in the second row around all these fans. And it looked like, no lie, man, it looked like an ex-champion who was like defeated with a towel on over him. You had to feel sorry for him, but he kept wanting to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like that was the first time where I looked at it like, you know what? This is a guy out here trying to prove people wrong when he had nothing. And he kept coming. And I feel like
I'll definitely defer to you on that. You were close to the situation. You saw it happen. And
it was bad.
But see, again, I hear that and I go, well, we're hoping for like something unrealistic that he's gonna like emerge out of a bust through a door and be Superman when the playoffs start. And that's the sad part about it because this fan base is going to be taken through the same thing.
I agree. And Mike, the one thing that, and I hate to bring this up, but we go through this annually. January has always been phenomenal for the Sixers, going back to Brett Brown with Doc Rivers and them. You know, sometimes, you go on Facebook and you like click on something from a year ago and there'll be an article that I've written saying, wow, the Sixers are rolling. The Sixers are hot. And then all of a sudden he gets injured or something else happens, right? So it's one of those things where I feel like, people in Philadelphia, we get caught up with this team from month to month, but we don't realize it's kind of like we're reading the same chapter over and over and over again. And you're right. Right now I'm looking at it, you're saying his health, he's a phenomenal player, but it's all predicated on his health. And when he doesn't play, unlike last season, they're not very good. They're not very successful. And then you look at him, he's not the only one banged up right now, too. So, this team has a lot of concerns, heading to the playoffs because at the end of the day, they're sliding in the wrong direction.
Just quickly, I wanted to ask you about the 65-game thing, which has become a hullabaloo around the league because stars are coming out going, I didn't really want to prove that. I think that's ridiculous. They're all coming out. So when most important NBA players start doing that, there's going to be some kind of tweak. First of all, how do you feel about the players' reaction to that? Because it shows absolutely no regard for fans at all, that their attitudes. And B, what do you think the league will do in response to it?
The players' reaction to that isn't surprising to me. And you know why? Because some guys before it was like, 15 games, that's all right. I can do that. Then guys start getting hurt. And now all of a sudden, these are guys who are in line to make all NBA. So now they're losing out on $50 million, right? Halliburton is one guy in particular. So yeah, now the guys are like, man, we didn't sign up for that. So like, because they know, like in the end, they're losing out because your money is based off of if you make all NBA or not. So I'm not surprised. B, I think it's going to get changed. I do, because I think that when it comes down to something, it is a players' league, and again, they need to get. They need to talk to their player reps because they're the ones who voted, and we're finding out that they didn't call them. So that's not really good. But at the same time, I do feel like it's going to change because let's face it, if Joel Embiid and Tyrese Halliburton are two of the best top 5 guys in the league right now, well, neither one of them are going to be first team All NBA. So then all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, you made first team All NBA, but it was an asterisk to it. Like you made it because such and such didn't play enough games. So I think that's going to be a bad look for the league. When you start getting these certain guys, making these teams, but they didn't deserve it. And we're talking about first team. Joel won't even make third team, nor will Halliburton if they don't play. So, it's kind of like I think that's not what the league
Yeah.
really wants.
Don't mess with their money. Don't mess with their money. It's hysterical to me. And I was saying earlier in this broadcast that the only thing that will change this whole thing is to reduce the amount of games in the season, and I know that will never have a chance of happening.
Nah, it won't. It won't.
No, owners aren't going to give up their money either. All right, man. Listen, thanks for coming on for a period of time. Good to see you again, and continue doing a great job. You're going to have to write a lot of drama coming down the stretch here, Keith.
It's crazy, man. You thought it would change after the process, right?
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks much to the great Keith Pompey for joining us with his insights as he covers the 76ers. Boy, not an optimistic time for the Sixers. Is it an optimistic time for the Eagles? All right, they've got the two coordinators on board, but a little bit of controversy happened this week with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith being on a podcast, Kay Adams' podcast, where a lot of people are reading into what was said in the podcast, and basically what was said is, everything's okay. We just ran out of time, and whatever. But there's a bigger story here because A.J. Brown is a very interesting character. He's not quite the T.O. level, but he's fairly close, and he knows how to stir it up as well. This was a topic that was stirred up on Sports Talk Radio, though. So I want to bring Darren in here since I really don't listen to Sports Talk Radio anymore. So apparently there was a caller on a talk radio station that said that maybe it'd be a good idea to trade A.J. Brown for various reasons. And then the host kind of went with it. And then it became a rumor that the Eagles were interested in trading A.J. Brown. Listen, there's no way that they're going to trade him. He's still probably the best player on the team. And for all the clout they've lost now in the offseason, they can't very well lose that. But Darren, I know you were annoyed by this for a certain reason. So explain to the people, your beef has more to do with Sports Talk Radio and the mechanisms of Sports Talk Radio where callers can actually create something of controversy, right?
Yeah, it bewilders me, right? So, and I've worked in sports radio for 20 years. I've never seen, and by the way, there is no way that A.J. Brown is getting traded. Absolutely not. But it's amazing to me that a caller calls up a random midday show, makes the suggestion, and the host goes, that's a good idea, and then just proceeds to talk about it for 2 days. And then it becomes a national story, like some reporter heard from a source within the team that it's a possibility of trading him. It's bizarre to me. Like, what the hell has happened to our media? What is going on with the media in this world right now?
This is really the reality of Sports Talk Radio, where you need content, and that's content. I
know all about that.
I don't.
My problem isn't with the show talking about it. My problem is that news outlets pick it up and say, "Wow, they're on." Kay Adams is a national show. Like, how the hell does it get there?
But the stuff on social media is picked up as real, and sometimes it's not. It's just a different world. I laugh at it. But if I'm doing a Sports Talk Radio show and a guy brings something like that up, I go, wow, maybe I can milk this for a little content. Let's see how people feel about it. And you get the conversation flowing. I mean, that's the essence of Sports Talk Radio.
Well, like I said, I get that. And that's not my problem. My problem is people taking that as an actual rumor and story that's out there to a national level. That's what
A.J. Brown. If A.J. Brown is traded, then what are you going to say?
I'm going to say the Eagles made a bad move. That's what I'll say.
All right. So that's all on the Eagles front. Is not much football content. This is that bland week where we got to wait several days till we get to some Super Bowl chat. But the Flyers they're not really a topic other than what is going on, because a lot of people are reacting to the Carter Hart and being one of the guys that had to turn himself in to the police in London, Ontario, over this junior hockey scandal, sexual assault. See, here's the thing. And here's the question with it. even if he is exonerated, and you know what's going to happen now in a case like this where you get lawyers involved representing those 5 hockey players, they're going to make the case, well, they're going to disparage the woman's character. They're going to say it was consensual. They're going to say it's her word against theirs. They're going to say, how could she identify who these players specifically were? She was drunk, et cetera, et cetera. Well, that's something they'll ferret out in the court system. My question to you is this, because this is what people are asking on social media. Is Carter Hart done with the Flyers? So if he is exonerated, and that's the only way that this would be a question, if he is exonerated, could he come back as a Flyer? Is he done as a Flyer even if he's exonerated?
Mike, there's no power. There's no higher power than the court of public opinion. So I think it'd be really tough for them to bring him back. And then look, you got the punter in Buffalo. Matt Araiza, I think his name was. Perfect situation, right? Awful, charges.
And he was exonerated. And he doesn't have a job.
Nobody will touch him, and he was the best in his position.
We do have a frame of reference in the city, though, because the Phillies did bring back Odubel Herrera. There was a lot of consternation. They gave him a chance to actually play for the team, and after a while, people kind of accepted it. I never did. I didn't think there was any way they should have brought him back. But
Kareem Hunt is another example. Kareem Hunt with the hotel, the girl in the hotel.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying no way. The Flyers are in a position where they have to completely move forward. They have to rebuild it, and you could not withstand this kind of thing.
I think the chances of them moving on from him are far greater than bringing him back.
I think you're right about it, and I would make the same move if I was Danny Briere and Keith Jones. It's time to close it down for today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I know we were very chatty today, at least I was, but, it's this Sixer thing. It's kind of aggravating because it's going to lead to the same conclusion. We go into every season hoping that there's going to be some kind of a change. And then the reality smacks you when the new year comes in, and then in February, and you start worrying. Now, there is a trade deadline that's coming up in a couple days, so hold on to your hats. The whole perspective may change if they can make a deal here, and I think they definitely have to make a deal. You can reach me, Mike at MikeMiss.com. I'd love to hear from the people. You can also check me out on Twitter, MikeMiss25. And if you want a personal shout-out, just go to Cameo.com and put my name in there, and I'll give you a personal shout-out, send you a video. That'd be cool, and we'll have a lot of fun. For Darren, Mike, have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll be back with you next week. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.